the new bill that the federal government tried to pass to amend the CERB program that will include some penalties for fraudulent use of that program didn't pass with opposition support. It failed in the House. The Prime Minister saying today that this is simple politics.
It's not on the substance of what we put forward that there were real concerns. It was on procedural and political basis that the opposition prevented us from debating and eventually voting on these measures. So that's the disappointment.
Jagmeet Singh is the leader of the New Democratic Party, and it did oppose the bill today. Thank you very much for being with us, Jagmeet. And I guess you can respond right now to what the Prime Minister had to say. The procedural issues he's referring to, as I understand it, having Parliament reopen in a more normal fashion. But just your response to what you just heard?
It's not at all the case in terms of what we had asked for. We'd asked for, one, that CERB be extended for families in need, and two, that Canadians living with disabilities all be helped. The government proposed a tax credit, which would only help a small percentage, and the vast majority would not get the help they need. But I was still open to carving off the disability portion of the proposal to help out even some Canadians with disabilities. I supported that. And then finally, the approach that the government's taking, there are existing fraud laws to go after anyone who's committed fraud, but to charge people who needed help and were encouraged by the government to get help and risk them going to jail is the wrong approach.
Just in terms of those, the penalties for fraudulent use, is there some middle ground here? And obviously, you would hope, one would hope that we don't send people to jail for what would be an honest mistake, but that there are others who might be abusing the system and that there should be penalties applied.
Well, there's existing fraud laws that are well established. There's many court cases. Those laws are defined and are defended by the Constitution. What the government's proposing to retroactively charge people effectively with a criminal offense when there was none would not actually even be constitutional. It really makes very little sense to go about that way when there's already fraud laws in place. If someone stole someone's identity, if someone made forged documents or massive misrepresentations, there's clear fraud laws in place for that. What the government's proposing would, in fact, cover people that were on the boundaries, that were close to qualifying in the government themselves. The minister responsible said, if you need help, please apply. MPs who were parliamentary secretaries like Adam Vaughan said to people, if you need help, just apply. And now those same people who may have said, well, we lost work 13 days instead of 14 days, which is what the qualifications say, or we earned 4,900 instead of the 5,000 amount, they've applied, and now we're going to face criminal jeopardy. That's nonsensical. What the government can do is use existing fraud laws, which would make it very clear that someone who's committed fraud would be prosecuted. But to have these penalties unconstitutional and that would end up overreaching and getting people in jail who have no business being fined or sent to jail is the wrong approach.
Sure. And I mean, I think, you know, any one of us would hope that common sense would prevail and that there's a difference between somebody mistaking 14 days versus 15 and those out there who are misrepresenting. And we've all heard stories, you know, anecdotal accounts of people who are still getting EI and getting the CERB. They know that that can't possibly be what's supposed to be happening, but they're happily pocketing the money. So just in terms of getting the bill to the place it needs to go, what needs to happen to have amendments take place in a timely fashion so that we can actually get something moving ahead here for the benefit of Canadians?
Well, when it comes to recovering money, there's a tax system that can be used. CRA knows exactly where the money has gone. It can be recovered that way. So I don't think there's any concerns there. And just today it was reported that on their own, 200,000 Canadians sent money back because they realized it was made inadvertently or mistakenly. What I would say for the government to move forward, we've made it really clear, if the government's willing to help all Canadians with disabilities and extend CERB, we're more than happy to pass any legislation that would do that.
And when you say extend CERB, what are you asking for? In what way would you like it extended and for what period?
Well, I leave that flexibility open. I don't want to be overly prescriptive. The government can do that in whatever way is most effective. But the plan is that there needs to be a plan for Canadians who can't go back to work and whose CERB is going to end because there was a 16-week limit on CERB. And for a lot of people, their workplaces aren't open. They cannot go back to work and they want to go to work. I've shared stories that I've heard from people who are looking for jobs every single day and can't find anything to go back to. So for families right now that are looking at CERB ending, but no job in sight, they need a plan. There needs to be a plan in place for them. And I'm saying at a minimum, extend CERB, and it can be reevaluated, how long that needs to go on for, when it should stop. But there needs to be some guarantee to families that they will have a way to put food on the table.
One of the things that the government did do recently, at your urging, your party's urging, is this whole question of paid sick leave. There are great concerns, and we've heard them from many of the people who come on this network, about the cost to business of that paid sick leave. Are you worried about, and can we get you to be worried about, the economic consequences of that kind of a policy?
Well, first, if I look at the economic consequences of a pandemic, and if people are sick and they go into work because they don't have paid sick leave, the risk of another second wave of COVID-19 and the massive economic implications of that should give people pause. We no longer should have a society where people have to choose between going into work and going into work sick, or staying at home and not knowing if they can pay the bills because they don't have paid sick leave. That should be a new normal. We should move to a point where everyone has paid sick leave. And at the starting point, what we've suggested is we can modify the CERB or EI or any other program to deliver it with federal dollars to begin with, and that we should move to a point where we work with provinces and businesses to establish a long-term paid sick leave as a standard for everyone in Canada.
And the cost to business, what about those who say it'll result in layoffs for employers in a way that, and in fact, a change in the way that they'll treat employers, more contract, less full-time?
Well, I've said that the starting point should be that it's something federally delivered, given that businesses are in a tough position right now. And then in the future, it should be something that we work with all levels of government to establish an ongoing program that's there for now and forever. That's something that's going to take some time to work out. But in the short term, we can immediately modify CERB or EI to deliver paid sick leave right away with federal dollars.
There are growing concerns that we have not yet seen a fiscal update and that there isn't really a path to fiscal accountability, bringing down the deficit and potentially taking a look at some of the revenue-raising routes that we may have to go. What's your thought about when that process should start? When should Canadians begin to be part of a conversation about what happens next?
Well, I want that conversation to happen right now. I think that a lot of folks are wondering when we get back to normal. And I don't think getting back to normal is good. It's where the essential workers we need in society were paid the least, where our healthcare systems have been starved of funding, and where we didn't have the resilience or fairness in Canada to be able to deal with the pandemic. So we need to build a fair society and a more resilient society. And to do that, we should start talking about what does a healthcare system look like and what are revenue streams. We absolutely need to look at revenue. And one of those revenue streams that the Parliamentary Budget Office has pointed out as being a massive loss of revenue for Canada are the offshore tax havens and other tax avoidance, where billions of dollars are being lost because of companies that are purposely sheltering their income in other countries for no other purpose than to hide their profits, to not pay their fair share of taxes. I think that's something we need to crack down on, and that's would be a significant revenue increasing step.
All right, it's great to have your thoughts today. We really appreciate your time.